My mother called me sobbing at 3 a.m., begging me not to let Rebecca get evicted. "Please, she'll be homeless by Friday. You can't do this to your own sister." This was the same woman who'd sent me a group text 3 weeks earlier, telling me to step away from the family because my presence was damaging Rebecca's mental health. For 5 years, I'd been their personal ATM. $87,421.13. Every crisis, every emergency, every time Rebecca's latest breakdown cost them money they didn't have. Dad's rent when he lost his job. Mom's surgery when insurance fell through. Rebecca's endless cycle of therapy, rehab therapy, relapse, repeat. But when Rebecca's therapist suggested that maybe, just maybe, the family's financial dependence on me was enabling her victim mentality, they didn't examine their behavior. They didn't question whether treating me like a bank account while treating Rebecca like a fragile princess was healthy for anyone. Instead, they held a family meeting without Mia and decided I was the toxic one. At 01:03 on a Thursday, I received their verdict via group message. "We've talked, and we think it's best if you step away for now. Rebecca's mental health is suffering, and your presence isn't helping." No phone call, no discussion. Just a text message dismissing me like a problematic employee, sent while I was sleeping. Rebecca even added a crying emoji like she was the victim in this situation. They wanted me gone. Fine. But what they forgot was simple. When you kick out the family ATM, the money stops flowing too. And 3 weeks later, when their perfect plan collapsed and Rebecca was facing eviction, they discovered exactly what stepping away really meant. But they forgot one small detail about stepping away. It started innocently enough. 5 years ago, Dad lost his job. When the construction company he worked for went under, he was 58, too old to find equivalent work, too young for retirement. The rent was due, and he called me in tears. "Just this once," he said. "We'll pay you back as soon as I find something." That one-time help became a monthly transfer. Then, Mom needed surgery, and insurance only covered 60%. Then, Rebecca had her first major breakdown and needed intensive therapy. Each crisis felt urgent, temporary, like if I just helped them through this one thing, they'd get back on their feet. But they never got back on their feet. Instead, they got comfortable. Comfortable with me covering Dad's rent every month. Comfortable with me paying Rebecca's therapy bills. Her rehab costs her rent when she couldn't hold down a job. Comfortable with me being their personal bank account available 24/7 for every emergency. I kept detailed records, not because I was planning to demand repayment, but because I'm a business consultant, and tracking expenses is second nature. Rent payments, medical bills, car repairs, grocery money. When Rebecca's food stamps ran out, over 5 years, it added up to exactly $87,421.13. I was never their child, just their personal bank account. Rebecca was the golden child long before I became the family ATM. 2 years younger than me, but somehow always the one who needed protecting, coddling, endless second chances. When we were kids, Rebecca's tantrums got her what she wanted. When we were teenagers, Rebecca's anxiety got her out of chores, homework, any responsibility she didn't like. As adults, Rebecca's mental health became the family's primary concern. Every decision revolved around what was best for Rebecca. Every conversation centered on Rebecca's latest crisis. When Rebecca got fired from jobs for not showing up, it was because of her depression. When Rebecca couldn't pay rent, it was because of her anxiety. When Rebecca relapsed and needed another round of expensive treatment, it was because our family wasn't supportive enough. "We have to be patient with her," Mom would say. Whenever I suggested that maybe constant bailouts weren't helping Rebecca learn to take care of herself. She's struggling with things you don't understand. Dad would nod along. We can't abandon her when she needs us most. But Rebecca wasn't struggling alone. I was struggling too. Struggling to maintain my own life while funding theirs. But my struggles never counted because Rebecca's mental health always came first. Rebecca's mental health always came before my financial health. The guilt trip started early and never stopped. Every time I hesitated before sending money, every time I suggested they might need to cut expenses or find additional income sources, the same phrase would come out, "We raised you." "We raised you," Mom would say when I questioned why Rebecca couldn't get a job that offered health insurance. "We raised you," Dad would add when I suggested they might need to downsize their apartment. "We raised you," they'd say in unison whenever I showed any sign of financial support fatigue. It was their trump card, their ultimate weapon. The idea that 18 years of basic parental obligation had created a lifetime debt that could never be repaid. That feeding me, housing me, and sending me to school meant I owed them my entire financial future. They never mentioned that they'd raised Rebecca too, but somehow she owed them nothing. Only I carried the burden of repaying them for the basic requirement of keeping a child alive. They raised me to be their retirement plan. The message came through at 01:03 on a Thursday morning while I was sleeping. My phone buzzed with a group chat notification. Me, Mom, Dad, and Rebecca. I grabbed my phone, expecting some family emergency, maybe Rebecca in crisis again. Instead, I found this. "Hi everyone, we've had some long conversations over the past few days, and we've come to a difficult decision. We think it's best if you step away from family activities and interactions for now. Rebecca's mental health has been suffering lately, and her therapist believes that some of the family dynamics are contributing to her struggles. We know this is hard to hear, but we need to prioritize Rebecca's recovery right now. We hope you can understand and respect this decision. We'll reach out when we feel the family is in a better place to reconnect. Love you." It was sent from Mom's phone, but I could tell this was a group effort. They'd discussed it, planned it, rehearsed it, the formal tone. The therapeutic language, the way it painted me as the problem, without actually accusing me of anything specific. It was carefully crafted to make them look reasonable, and me look like the toxic family member who needed to be managed. No phone call, no conversation, no chance to defend myself or understand what I'd supposedly done wrong. Just a clinical dismissal delivered, while I slept like I was some problematic employee being terminated. They wanted me to step away, so I stepped away completely. I spent the next hour staring at that message, reading it over and over. 5 years of financial support, and this was how they communicated with me. Like I was some distant relative. They barely tolerated not the person who'd been keeping them financially afloat for half a decade. By 02:15, I'd made my decision. I opened my banking app and canceled every automatic transfer I had set up for them. Dad's monthly rent payment scheduled for the 15th. Mom's health insurance supplement set to transfer weekly. Rebecca's therapy copay automatically sent every Tuesday. Then I went into my investment accounts and froze the emergency fund I designated for their crises. No more midnight transfers when Rebecca got evicted. No more instant bailouts when Dad's car broke down. No more covering Mom's prescription costs when money got tight. If they wanted me to step away from family activities, I'd step away from family financial support too. By 02:15, every automatic transfer was canceled. The first call came at 0:15 Friday morning, barely 24 hours after I'd canceled the transfers. Dad's voice on the voicemail was panicked, shaking in a way I'd never heard before. "Hey, it's me. Listen, there's been some kind of mistake with the bank transfer. The rent payment didn't go through and the landlord is saying we're late. I tried calling the bank, but they said the transfer was canceled from your end. That can't be right, can it? I mean, we had that little disagreement, but surely you wouldn't. Look, can you just call me back? The late fee kicks in Monday, and if we don't get this sorted out. He left 3 more voicemails that day, each one more desperate than the last. By the final call, he wasn't even pretending it was a banking error anymore. Please pick up. I know you're angry, but this isn't about us anymore. If we can't make rent, we'll be evicted. Your mother's been crying all day. Rebecca doesn't know yet, and if she finds out we might lose the apartment because of money problems, it'll send her into a complete spiral. You know how fragile she is right now. The entitlement was breathtaking. They'd kicked me out of the family but expected me to keep paying their bills. Dad's voice was shaking when he said the rent bounced. By the weekend, Rebecca's carefully constructed support system was collapsing. Her therapy appointment on Tuesday got canceled when the payment card was declined. Her prescription anxiety medication, the expensive brand name version that insurance wouldn't cover, ran out Sunday, and the pharmacy refused to fill it without payment. Monday morning, she called in sick to her part-time job because she was having a panic attack about money. Tuesday, she got written up for missing too many shifts. Wednesday, her therapist's office left a voicemail saying they were suspending her sessions until her account was current. Thursday, she received an eviction notice. She'd been late on rent twice in the past 6 months, and this third violation triggered the landlord's zero-tolerance policy. 30 days to pay all outstanding amounts plus fees or face legal action. The irony was perfect. Rebecca, whose mental health was supposedly suffering because of my presence in the family, was now facing the exact kind of crisis that always sent her into a tailspin. Except this time, there was no family ATM to transfer emergency funds and make it all go away. Rebecca's therapist stopped taking her calls when payments bounced. The guilt campaign started that Friday and didn't stop. Voicemail after voicemail, text after text, each message more desperate and manipulative than the last. You're punishing Rebecca for something that wasn't even her decision. Mom's tearful voicemail began. She didn't want you to step away. This was about protecting her mental health, and now you're destroying it out of spite. Dad tried a different approach. I know we hurt your feelings, but this is bigger than hurt feelings now. This is about family loyalty, about not abandoning people when they need you most. We raised you better than this. But it was Rebecca's message that revealed exactly how they saw me. I don't understand why you're being so cruel. All we asked was for some space while I work on my mental health, and you decided to try to make us homeless. What kind of sister does that? What kind of person does that? Not once did any of them acknowledge that maybe asking someone to step away while expecting their continued financial support was unreasonable. Not once did they consider that their dismissal might have consequences. In their minds, I was supposed to accept being kicked out of the family while continuing to fund their lives like nothing had changed. Mom said I was killing my own sister. 2 weeks after the financial support stopped, they scheduled a family video call. Our monthly check-in that had been happening for 3 years, except this time I wasn't invited to step away from it. Mom sent me a calendar invite, like nothing had happened. At 16:28 on Sunday, I joined the call to find all 3 of them sitting together on Mom and Dad's couch. They'd clearly coordinated this plan, every word rehearsed, every emotional beat. Rebecca sat in the middle, looking fragile and pale, surrounded by parents who kept shooting meaningful glances at the camera. "We're so glad you decided to join us," Mom began, her voice dripping with forced warmth. "We've been hoping we could talk through some of this misunderstanding." Misunderstanding? I kept my voice level. Rebecca has something she wants to say, Dad prompted, nudging her forward like a child at a school recital. Rebecca took a shaky breath. I'm sorry if my request for space hurt your feelings. I never wanted you to feel rejected. My therapist just thought it would be helpful if we took a break from family interactions while I worked on some personal stuff. But I never expected you to cut us off financially. That feels really punitive. Every word was carefully chosen, every pause calculated for maximum emotional impact. They had rehearsed every guilt trip and sob story. The next week brought reinforcements. Aunt Carol called Uncle Jim. Texted, even my cousin Sarah reached out. The family had mobilized their entire network to pressure me into resuming financial support. Your parents are really struggling, Aunt Carol said during our 20-minute call. I know family dynamics can be complicated, but surely you don't want to see them lose their home over a disagreement. Uncle Jim's text was more direct. Whatever happened between you and Rebecca, your parents don't deserve to suffer. They're good people who raised you right. Maybe it's time to be the bigger person. The family narrative was spreading through our extended relatives like wildfire. I was the vindictive sister who'd abandoned my struggling family out of spite. Rebecca was the innocent victim caught in the crossfire. Mom and Dad were the unfortunate collateral damage in my cruel revenge scheme. None of them knew about the Secretvoices 03 group text. None of them knew about 5 years of being treated like a bank account. None of them knew that I hadn't abandoned my family. My family had dismissed me and then panicked when their ATM stopped working. Even the extended family joined the guilt parade. By the 3rd week, Rebecca's mental health had become their nuclear weapon. Every conversation, every voicemail, every text message centered around the catastrophic damage I was supposedly inflicting on her psychological well-being. She's barely eating, Mom reported in a tearful voicemail. She can't sleep because she's worried about being homeless. She keeps asking what she did wrong, why her sister hates her so much, that she'd rather see her on the street than just send money like she used to. Dad's approach was more accusatory. Rebecca had to quit therapy because she can't afford it anymore. Do you understand what that means? She was finally making progress, and now she's backsliding because her own sister decided money was more important than family. The manipulation was breathtaking. They'd spent years telling me that Rebecca's mental health required my financial sacrifice. Now they were arguing that my absence was destroying the very mental health they'd claimed to be protecting. Rebecca's mental health became their nuclear option. The phone call from my bank came on a Tuesday morning. The fraud prevention department needed to verify some unusual activity on my accounts, specifically a business loan application for $80,000 that I'd supposedly submitted the day before. We're calling because the signature doesn't match our records, the representative explained. The application shows your name, social security number, and employment information, but the signature is clearly different from what we have on file. I was sitting in my office staring at my computer screen in disbelief. I never applied for any business loan. That's what we suspected. The application was submitted online, but it requires a wet signature for final approval. Someone tried to forge your signature on the documents. We've flagged this as identity theft and frozen the application. They sent me copies of everything. Bank statements, employment verification, financial projections, all using my personal information to justify an $80,000 loan for something called Rebecca Grace Recovery Services, LLC. The signature at the bottom looked like a child's attempt to copy my handwriting. They forged my signature for $80,000. The business loan application was sophisticated, I'll give them that. Rebecca was listed as the primary business owner with Mom and Dad as co-signers. The business plan described a peer support recovery service that would help people with mental health struggles transition back into independent living. It was actually brilliant, using Rebecca's mental health history as the foundation for a fake business designed to extract money using my credit. The financial projections showed exactly $80,000 in startup costs with a 5-year repayment plan that coincidentally matched the amount I'd been sending them annually. But the real tell was in the details. The business address was Mom and Dad's apartment. The primary contact number was Rebecca's cell phone. The market research section included phrases I'd heard them use in family conversations like Rebecca's unique perspective on recovery and turning personal struggles into professional strengths. They'd spent weeks crafting this fraud, incorporating family knowledge and my personal financial information to create a convincing loan application. The only thing they couldn't fake was my signature, which is why the bank caught it. They created a fake business in Rebecca's name using my credit. At 26:15 that evening, I received an anonymous email with no subject line. The sender was a burner Gmail account, but the content made it clear who had sent it. "You should know what's really been happening," the message began. "I've been keeping track of everything because I suspected something like this might happen. Your family has been meeting without you for weeks planning this whole thing. They call it getting what we're owed." Attached were screenshots of text messages between Mom, Dad, and Rebecca discussing the loan application strategy. Messages about using her credit since she owes us anyway, and making it look legitimate so the bank doesn't get suspicious. But the most damning evidence was a photo of Rebecca's eviction notice, not the recent one they'd been crying about, but one from 6 months ago that they'd hidden from me. She'd been facing eviction long before they sent me the group text, which meant their story about my absence causing her housing crisis was completely fabricated. The final attachment was a series of photos showing bills, overdue notices, and collection letters going back over a year. Mom and Dad were months behind on everything before they'd even asked me to step away. The financial crisis wasn't caused by my absence. It was the reason they'd tried to get rid of me in the first place. Aunt Carol had been documenting everything in secret. That night, I pulled up my own financial records and created the spreadsheet I should have made years ago. Every transfer, every emergency payment, every temporary loan that had never been repaid. I organized it by family member, by category, by year. Dad. Rent payments. Car insurance, utilities, medical copays. Total over 5 years. $31,215. Mom health insurance supplements, prescription costs. Physical therapy, dental work. Total $22,867. Rebecca therapy, copays, medication. Rent assistance, car payments. Grocery money, rehab costs, emergency funds. Total $33,339. The spreadsheet was brutal in its clarity. Over 5 years, I'd sent them $87,421.13. Not one payment had ever been repaid. Not one transfer had ever been acknowledged as a loan rather than a gift. But more importantly, the timeline showed that their financial problems had existed long before my supposed toxic presence in the family. They hadn't asked me to step away to protect Rebecca's mental health. They'd asked me to step away so they could steal from me without the guilt of looking me in the eye. The spreadsheet showed exactly who owed whom. The next morning, I called my attorney. Jennifer Martinez had handled my business contracts for 3 years, but this was the first time I'd needed her expertise with family fraud. I laid out everything: the forged loan application, the text message, evidence the 5-year pattern of financial exploitation. "This is textbook identity theft," she said after reviewing the bank documents. "Using someone's personal information to apply for credit without permission is a federal crime. The fact that they're family members doesn't make it legal. What are my options?" You could file criminal charges. With this level of documentation, the prosecutor would likely pursue felony fraud charges against all three of them. Your father and mother as co-conspirators, Rebecca as the primary applicant. We're talking potential prison time. I sat with that for a moment. Prison time. For my parents. For Rebecca. Or, Jennifer continued, you could use this as leverage. Confront them with the evidence, make it clear that their financial support is permanently terminated, and give them a choice. Accept the consequences of their actions, or face criminal prosecution. The lawyer said identity fraud could mean prison time. That afternoon, I made my decision. I wouldn't file criminal charges. Not yet. But I would confront them with everything I'd discovered. They needed to understand that their manipulation and attempted fraud had consequences that I wasn't the naive family ATM they could exploit indefinitely. The monthly family video call was scheduled for Sunday. Perfect timing. They'd be expecting another opportunity to guilt me into resuming financial support, another chance to perform their rehearsed victimhood routine. Instead, they were going to get a presentation. A comprehensive breakdown of their 5-year financial exploitation, their recent fraud attempt, and the new reality of our relationship going forward. I'd spent years enabling their behavior by treating their manipulation as normal family dysfunction. I'd accepted their guilt trips, internalized their blame, continued sending money, even when their treatment of me became increasingly disrespectful. But the fraud attempt had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. They wanted to treat me like an ATM fine. But ATMs don't have feelings to hurt, and they don't provide customer service when people try to rob them. I decided they deserved to face the truth together. I spent the next 2 days organizing everything into a presentation that would be impossible to deny, dismiss, or deflect. Every bank transfer, every text message, every piece of evidence, Aunt Carol had provided, all organized chronologically with clear financial summaries. Section 1, 5 years of financial support. The complete breakdown of $87,421.13 organized by recipient and category. Section 2, the step-away request. Their group text message followed by documentation of how their financial crisis had existed months before they'd asked me to leave. Section 3, the fraud attempt. The loan application, the forged signature, the text messages discussing their plan to get what we're owed. Section 4, moving forward. A clear statement that financial support was permanently terminated, that any future contact would be through my attorney, and that any additional fraud attempts would result in immediate criminal charges. I titled the presentation, Family Financial Review 2019 to 2024. Professional, clinical, emotionally detached, just like they'd been when they sent me that 0103 group text. I organized 5 years of financial abuse into one presentation. Sunday evening at 21:30, I joined the family video call with my presentation ready. They were all gathered on the familiar couch again. Mom, Dad, and Rebecca positioned like they were posing for a sympathy portrait. Rebecca looked particularly fragile, wrapped in a blanket with tissues strategically placed nearby. "Thank you for joining us," Mom began with practiced warmth. "We've been hoping we could find a way to work through this misunderstanding and get our family back to normal. We miss you," Dad added, his voice heavy with manufactured emotion. "And we're worried about you too. This anger you're holding on to, it isn't healthy for anyone." Rebecca nodded along, playing her part perfectly. "I've been thinking about what I said before, and maybe I could have communicated better about needing space, but I hope we can move past this, and actually..." I interrupted, sharing my screen. "I have a presentation I'd like to show you. I think it will clear up any misunderstandings about our family situation." The title slide appeared, Family Financial Review, 2019-2024. Their expressions shifted instantly from rehearsed concern to genuine confusion. They expected another guilt session, not a reckoning. "Let's start with recent events," I said, clicking to the next slide. Bank documents filled the screen, the loan application with Rebecca's name and my forged signature. "This is the business loan application that was submitted using my personal information 3 days ago. Notice the signature at the bottom." Dad's face went completely white. Mom's mouth fell open. Rebecca started shaking her head. I didn't," Rebecca stammered. "The bank's fraud department called me personally." I continued, my voice steady and professional. "They have security footage of Dad visiting the bank branch to submit the physical documents. They also have the IP address where the online application was submitted. Mom and Dad's apartment." I clicked to the next slide showing screenshots of their text messages that Aunt Carol had provided. Messages about getting what we're owed and using her credit since she won't help anymore. "This is identity theft," I said calmly. "It's a federal crime. The FBI investigates cases like this. People go to prison for cases like this." Mom started crying. "We were desperate. We didn't know what else to do." "You were desperate because you'd been lying to me for months," I replied, clicking to show Rebecca's eviction notice from 6 months ago. "This is Rebecca's first eviction notice, dated 3 months before you asked me to step away. Your financial crisis existed long before you decided I was toxic to the family." Dad's face went white when he saw the forged signature. The next section was the complete financial breakdown. 5 years of data organized into clean charts and graphs that made the exploitation impossible to deny. "This is what I've provided your family since 2019, I announced as the summary slide appeared. $87,421.13. I clicked through each category. Dad's expenses, $31,215. Rent, car, insurance, utilities, medical bills. Mom's expenses, $22,867. Health insurance, prescriptions, dental work, physical therapy." Rebecca was openly sobbing now, but I wasn't finished. Rebecca's expenses, $33,339. Therapy, medication, rent assistance, rehab, emergency funds, groceries, when food stamps ran out. The numbers sat on the screen, undeniable and devastating. 5 years of financial support, meticulously documented, never acknowledged as loans, never repaid. Not once in 5 years did anyone suggest this was temporary. Not once did anyone offer to pay me back. Not once did anyone acknowledge that maybe expecting your daughter to fund 3 adult lives while being excluded from family decisions was unreasonable. Dad tried to speak. "We were going to pay you back when what? When Rebecca got better. When you found better jobs. When the magical fairy of financial responsibility visited your apartment." My voice remained calm, but the words cut deep. "You had 5 years to discuss repayment. Instead, you discussed how to steal more money using my credit." Rebecca started crying when she saw the real numbers. The final slide was simple. "Moving forward, new family policy." 3 bullet points in clear professional language. First, all financial support is permanently terminated. No exceptions, no emergencies, no special circumstances. Second, any future contact will go through my attorney. Her card is being emailed to you after this call. Third, any additional attempts to use my personal information for credit applications or financial fraud will result in immediate criminal prosecution. I paused, looking at each of their faces on the screen. "You asked me to step away from the family. I'm granting your request permanently." Mom was sobbing uncontrollably now. "You can't just abandon us. We're your parents. We raised you." You raised me to be your retirement plan, I replied. But retirement plans don't have feelings, and they don't file fraud reports. Pick one. Be my family or be my financial burden. You can't be both anymore. Dad tried one last desperate appeal. What about Rebecca's mental health? What about everything she's been through? Rebecca's mental health improved dramatically when her therapist suggested that family financial dependence was enabling her victim mentality. That's why you asked me to step away. Remember, because my presence was damaging to her recovery. I clicked to end screen sharing. Well, mission accomplished. I've stepped away completely. Rebecca looked directly into the camera mascara streaming down her face. I hate you, she whispered. I hate you for doing this to us. Good, I replied. Hate is honest. It's the first honest emotion you've shown me in 5 years. Mom finally admitted I was just their ATM machine. The aftermath was swift and predictable. Within 2 weeks, I received updates through Aunt Carol, who had finally stopped pretending to be neutral in this family war. Dad lost the apartment by the end of the month, without my monthly rent payments, and with their credit destroyed by the failed fraud attempt. They couldn't qualify for a new lease anywhere decent. They moved into a studio across town, the kind of place with thin walls, and neighbors who blast music at 3 a.m. Rebecca's eviction went through as scheduled. She ended up moving back in with Mom and Dad, all 3 of them crammed into 600 square feet with 1 bathroom and nowhere to hide from each other. The family that had thrived on drama suddenly found themselves living in a pressure cooker of their own making. Mom tried calling once a month after the video call confrontation. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail asking if we could work something out because Rebecca was really struggling with the new living situation. I deleted it without listening to the end. They lost everything within 3 months. As for me, I've never been happier. The constant anxiety about their next crisis. The guilt trips, the midnight emergency calls. All of it stopped the moment I stepped away from being their family ATM. I bought a new car with the money I would have sent them in March. Took a vacation to Europe with April's savings. Started investing the money I used to wire them every month, watching my retirement account grow instead of watching their bank accounts. The silence from them is the most peaceful thing I've experienced in years. No more manufactured emergencies. No more emotional manipulation disguised as family loyalty. No more Rebecca's mental health being weaponized to extract money from me. I finally understand the difference between family and financial parasites. Real family doesn't dismiss you via group text and then try to steal your identity when the money stops flowing. At 32-20 in my life, I stepped away from a toxic family dynamic that had been draining me for 5 years. I've never been happier than when I stepped away for good.